The Mongol defeat at Ain Jalut in 1260 wasn't the end of the war between them and the Mamluks. For the next 50 years, the Mongols tried over and over to get revenge for their loss, but the Mamluks always fought them off bravely. In this video, we'll look at how the Mongol Ilkhanate tried to conquer Egypt, their other fights with the Mamluk Sultanate, and the battles of Elbistan and Homs. We want to thank Conqueror's Blade for sponsoring this video. Conqueror's Blade is a mix of a tactical MMO, RPG, and strategy game, and you can play it for free on your PC. The game is set in a big, open, medieval world. Your job is to create a warlord, build and command an army from 55 different kinds of units, and create your own empire. On December 19th, they're adding a new line of units called the Sons of the Steppes, inspired by the Mongols. They're also adding a new battle pass, new challenges, lots of nomad-style items, 3 new battlefields, better matchmaking, a ranking system, NPC houses, player titles, and a lot more. New players who sign up with our link will get 10 free gifts. These include a gold helmet, 3 unit XP cards, 3 hero XP cards, and 3 Hwacha arrow launchers to destroy enemy defenses. You'll get these gifts right after you finish signing up. To support our channel and get these gifts, just create a new account using the link in the description. Good luck on the battlefield. When Möngke died in 1259, the Mongol Empire was broken for good. Hulegu and the rulers who came after him stayed friendly with his brother Kublai, but Hulegu was the independent ruler of a huge territory known as the Ilkhanate, which stretched from modern-day Turkey to the Amu Darya River. Hulegu's cousins in the Golden Horde, the Chagatai Khanate and the Neguderis, quickly became enemies of the Ilkhans. The Ilkhans had to defend their borders from all three, and they also had to deal with rebellions inside their own lands. For the Ilkhans, the Mamluks were just one of several enemies, and they could only focus on them when the other Khanates weren't a big threat. For the Mamluks, however, their border with the Ilkhanate along the Euphrates River was the most important thing. After the Battle of Ain Jalut, the Mamluk Sultan Qutuz was killed by the very energetic Baybars. Baybars was very ambitious and driven, and he knew just how dangerous the Mongols were, so he prepared his entire kingdom to defend against them. He made the Mamluk army bigger, and built good relationships with the Golden Horde, the Genoese, and the Byzantine Empire, to make sure he could keep getting Turkic slave soldiers from the steppe. He set up a smart spy network to get information on the Ilkhanate and spread fake news there. This network was supported by signal towers, messenger pigeons, and better roads, bridges, and relay stations to send messages quickly. Forts on the border, like Albira and Al-Raqqa on the Euphrates, were made stronger. Whenever the Mongols raided, Baybars would march right away from Cairo to meet them. His quick response kept the border officials loyal because they knew their sultan would be there soon to help them, or to punish anyone who switched sides. During invasions, army groups would pull back and meet at special locations. There they would face the Mongols together or wait for the sultan. Baybars also built good relationships with the Bedouin nomads in Syria. They gave him helpful extra soldiers and information, and he stopped them from joining the Mongols. Finally, he made himself stronger at home by controlling the economy and choosing caliphs to make his rule seem official. He showed everyone that he was the defender of Islam. Baybars got his whole kingdom ready for Mongol attacks. It was a very good system that the Ilkhanate had a hard time fighting against, but it needed a very skilled ruler to make it work. After Ain Jalut in September 1260, a Mongol army of about 6,000 soldiers came back to Syria in December, led by Baydar. This army was beaten by the joined forces of Homs, Hama, and Aleppo. The battle happened near the grave of Khalid ibn al-Walid, and the Mamluks were helped by a thick fog and a well-timed attack from the side by local Bedouins. This first Battle of Homs, where the Mamluks had fewer soldiers than the Mongols, made people believe even more that the Mongols could be beaten. It also showed how important it was to fight together instead of having soldiers hide behind city walls. It was also the last big Mongol attack on Syria in the 1260s. Hulegu spent the next few years fighting with Burqa Khan of the Golden Horde over the valuable land of modern Azerbaijan, which Burqa thought belonged to the family of Jochi. In February 1265, Hulegu's son, Abaka, took over. Abaka was busy with attacks from the Chagatai and Neguderi and with the work of setting up a new empire. Baybars used this time to attack the Crusader forts that were left alone. From February to April 1265, Baybars captured Caesarea, Haifa, Arsuf, and Galilee, and he raided Cilicia. In 1268, he took Antioch. In 1270 and 1271, while Abaka was busy with invasions in the Far East, Baybars took forts like Crac des Chevaliers and Montfort. He also planned to attack Tripoli, which was a vassal of the Ilkhanate. Hulegu and the rulers after him sent letters to the kings and popes of Europe. They asked them to start a crusade against the Mamluks so they could beat them together. But almost no one listened. Louis IX's crusades had ended in a total disaster at Tunis in 1270, and that killed off any little bit of excitement left in Europe for another crusade. One exception was when the future King of England, Edward I, arrived at Acre in May 1271 with a small army. Abaka sent an army led by Samagar, the Mongol commander in Rum, to help him, but Samagar's army left when Baybars arrived. Edward's own soldiers didn't do well in their small raids, and they sailed back to England in September 1272. One of the people who took part in Samagar's raid was Mu'in al-Din Suleiman, who was better known as Pervane. Pervane was the most powerful person in what was left of the Seljuk state of Rum. The Seljuk Sultan Kaikous III was just a young boy, so Pervane ruled with Samagar, and they had a stable relationship. But when Abaka put his younger brother, Ajayi, in charge, Pervane didn't like the extra money he had to pay and the close watch Ajayi kept on him. He asked Abaka to call his brother back, saying that Ajayi was working with Baybars. Abaka promised he would, but he took his time. Feeling frustrated, Pervane contacted Baybars. The Sultan was curious but didn't make any promises. By the time Baybars' answer got to Pervane in 1274, Ajayi and Samagar had been replaced by Tokunyan, and Pervane didn't write back. Under Tokunyan, the Mongols put even more pressure on Anatolia, and Pervane had less power. In November 1275, the Mongols surrounded Albira, but Baybars had found out about it early, supposedly from his contacts with Pervane. At the same time, a group of Seljuk leaders met with Baybars in July 1276, with or without Pervane's help, and begged him to attack. Baybars decided there was enough support for him in Rum, so he agreed. He got his army ready over the winter of 1276 and set out in February 1277. As Baybars moved quickly up the Levantine coast, Pervane lost control of Rum as different Turkoman groups rebelled. A new Mongol army, led by Tudawan, cracked down on the leaders who had contacted Baybars. In Syria, Baybars sent a small force from Aleppo across the Euphrates to create a distraction, while his main army entered Anatolia in late April. After pushing back a Mongol forward group of 3,000 soldiers in the Taurus Mountains, Baybars heard that Tudawan was camped nearby on a plain near the town of Elbistan. He went after them, and the armies met on April 15, 1277. Tudawan's army had about 14,000 soldiers, split into 11 groups of 1,000. Most of them were Turkic heavy horsemen who fought like the Mongols. There was also a 12th group of 3,000 Georgians. An army of about the same size under Pervane, made of troops from Rum, was nearby. But Tudawan didn't trust them and kept them away from his battle lines. Tudawan's scouts had misjudged the size of the Mamluk army. He thought it was smaller, and that Baybars wasn't leading it. In reality, the Mamluks had a few thousand more soldiers than the Mongols. As the Mamluks entered the plain at its narrow end, they couldn't get into formation properly, and their center was ahead of their left side. The Mongol left side started the battle, shooting arrows at the Mamluk flag bearers in the center before charging. The Mamluk center broke and ran. The Mamluk left side was also hit hard by the Mongol right. It was a very dangerous moment for the Mamluks. At this point, their Bedouin soldiers probably ran away. Baybars sent in his backup troops, the soldiers from Hama, to strengthen his left side, and he managed to push the Mongols back. A short break let the Mamluks fix their lines and attack back. The Mongols fought hard, but the Mamluks had more soldiers, and that made the difference. Over the course of the day, the Mongols were slowly forced back. Their horses were tired, and they couldn't get fresh ones, so the Mongols got off their horses, which was a sign that they would fight to the death. After a great struggle, the Mamluks beat them and killed their commanders. The Seljuk army didn't do much in the battle and scattered. Pervane escaped, but his son was captured by Baybars. The next day, Baybars marched to Caesarea and got there on April 20th. Baybars ordered Pervane and the Seljuk Sultan to support him, but Pervane stayed in his own castle. They both knew that Baybars couldn't hold his position deep in enemy land with few supplies. They also knew his own kingdom was unprotected, and that a very angry Abaka was gathering his army. 5 days after entering Caesarea, Baybars was heading back to Syria. Even though some of his forward soldiers left to join the Mongols, he was in Damascus by June. Abaka got to Anatolia too late to catch Baybars. He was so angry that he almost killed everyone between Caesarea and Erzurum, but he was talked out of it. The summer heat stopped him from invading Syria. He was able to catch Pervane, though, and had him put to death. And so ended one of Baybars' most skilled military actions. It was lightning fast and destructive, and it created a huge mess for the Ilkhanate. It was a great shock when the Lion of Egypt suddenly died at the beginning of July 1277, right after he got back. Baybars had hoped to start a line of rulers, but his sons were removed from the throne. One of his Mamluks, Qalawun, finally became the Sultan in November 1279, but not everyone agreed with his rule. This was a perfect chance for Abaka. He put together an army led by his inexperienced brother, Mongke Timur. He raided Syria in November 1280 with a group of Knights Hospitaller and vassals of the Ilkhanate, King Leo III of Armenian Cilicia, and Count Bohemond VII of Tripoli. In September 1281, Mongke Timur came back with 40,000 to 50,000 Mongols, Armenians under Leo III, Georgians, Franks, and soldiers from Seljuk Rum. Abaka at first followed with another army, but an attack by the Golden Horde at Derbent forced him to stay back. The Mongol invasion gave the Mamluk groups who were fighting for power a common enemy to unite against. Under Qalawun, they moved forward, joined by soldiers from Syrian forts and Bedouins. They got to Homs a few days before the Mongols in late October. This gave their troops a chance to dig in and rest on the plain north of the city. They made their plans, as a Mongol who had switched sides told them what Mongke Timur was planning. Most of the Mongol army was to be in the center, and the right side was also supposed to be strong. The plan was to defeat the Mamluk left and center, where the Sultan's flags would be. Qalawun made his left side stronger and placed himself on a hill behind the front line to watch the battle and be a backup force. We don't know the exact number of Mamluk soldiers, but they probably had a little less than Mongke Timur's army. The Mongols marched through the night and arrived early on October 29th. It was a huge battle line over 24 kilometers long because both armies were so big. The sides of both armies were so far apart that they didn't know what was happening on the other side. Even though they were tired from the night march, the Mongols were eager to fight. The battle started when the Mongol right, led by Alinak, charged forward. The Mamluk left and part of their center broke apart and ran. Alinak kept chasing them. This is where Mongke Timur's lack of experience and the size of the battlefield started to cause problems. It seems there was no good communication with the command. Alinak chased the running Mamluks off the battlefield and all the way to the Lake of Homs. There, they got off their horses to rest, probably thinking the rest of the army would arrive soon. A similar charge by the Mongol left side didn't have as many soldiers as the Mongol right, so the Mamluk right and center were able to hold their ground and attack back. It's not clear what Qalawun's actual role was in this counterattack. Some stories say he led the attack himself, while others say he kept his position hidden and didn't even raise his flags to avoid Mongol arrows. The Mamluks pushed back the Mongol right, and the Bedouins came around to hit the Mongol flank. Mongol right fell back to the center, which was being held as a backup force under Mongke Timur. In the confusion that followed, Mongke Timur was hurt, maybe thrown from his horse, and couldn't command. Most of the Mongols then got off their horses to make a final stand around the prince, but they ended up running away from the Mamluk attack. The Mamluks chased the fleeing Mongols all the way to the border of the Ilkhanate. Many drowned in the Euphrates River or died in the desert. This chase was so deadly that Mamluk writers said more Mongols were killed while running away than in the actual battle. Qalawun and a small group of guards stayed on the battlefield. They had to hide their flags and stay quiet when the Mongol right wing finally came back, too late to change the outcome. It seems they were able to retreat in an orderly way back into the Ilkhanate. Abaka was furious about this loss and planned to return the next year, but he died in April 1282. The rulers who came after Abaka were not as stable or long-lived. Until 1295, the Ilkhanate had a series of short ruling leaders, infighting, internal rebellions, and new attacks by the Golden Horde. For now, the immediate Mongol threat to the Mamluks was over. Qalawun turned his attention to the remaining Frankish forts. These were all possible landing spots for European armies coming to help the Ilkhans. Cilicia was raided, the last Crusader forts inland were taken, and in April 1289, the Mongol vassal Tripoli fell. After Abacha's son, Ghazan Khan, died in March 1291, the Mamluks used the distraction in the Ilkhanate to take the last major Frankish city in the Holy Land, Acre. This left the Franks with only a few small territories, which fell in the next few years, and so 200 years of Crusader kingdoms came to an end. When Sultan al-Ashraf Khalil was killed in 1293, the Mamluks entered a time of political trouble over who would be the next sultan. In contrast, 1295 marked the start of the rule of the powerful Ghazan Khan, the son of Arghun. Ghazan wasn't the first Muslim Ilkhan, but by the time he was ruling, most of the Mongols in the Ilkhanate had converted to Islam, making the Ilkhanate an Islamic state. Even though Ghazan was a Muslim, this didn't change the Ilkhanate's policy toward the Mamluks. In the summer of 1299, a Mamluk raid into the Ilkhanate sacked the city of Mardin and damaged a mosque during Ramadan. Because of this, Ghazan was easily able to get a religious ruling against the Mamluks. He presented himself not as an invader, but as a holy warrior, coming to get revenge for crimes against Islam. This would encourage Mamluk soldiers to turn against their leaders. By December 1299, Ghazan and his army of Mongols, Georgians, and Armenians, led by their king Hethum II, had crossed the Euphrates River. Ghazan went around Aleppo and Hama and set up camp on the edge of the Syrian desert. There, he learned that the Mamluks were gathering at Homs, where they had beaten Möngke Temür 18 years before. Instead of falling into their trap, Ghazan decided to go around them. He crossed the Syrian desert and came out near a stream about 16 kilometers north of Homs on December 22nd. To the Mamluks, it looked like Ghazan was retreating, and they left their good position to chase him. In a reverse of the Second Battle of Homs, now the Mamluks were the ones who had to cross the desert. They tired themselves out to reach Ghazan early the next morning, while his own troops were rested, had drunk water, and were in formation. Most importantly, the Ilkhanate army was under the firm control of Ghazan and his commander Kutluk Shah, but the young Al-Nasir Muhammad couldn't control his senior commanders. On the morning of December 23, 1299, the Mamluks found Ghazan's army ready for battle. Ghazan commanded the center, his general Kutluk Shah commanded the right, and Hethum was on the left. Kutluk Shah's beating of war drums made the Mamluks think Ghazan was on the right, so they charged there, forcing the Mongol right side back. Ghazan led the counterattack against them, and Kutluk Shah gathered what forces he could and rejoined his Khan. The battle raged from 11 a.m. until nightfall, but finally, the Mamluks broke and ran. Ghazan chased them past Homs before setting up camp. He didn't want to be tricked into a fake retreat in the dark. Homs gave up without a fight, and Ghazan took the Sultan's treasure. Next, Ghazan marched to Damascus, which also gave up without a fight, though its fortress held out. It seemed like almost the entire Mamluk army in Syria had retreated, maybe called back to defend the capital. Mongol raiding parties were reaching as far as Gaza, and one source even said they entered Jerusalem. It looked like the Sultanate was about to fall. But on February 5, 1300, Ghazan left Damascus and returned to the Ilkhanate. Kutluk Shah had been left behind to take the fortress of Damascus, but he soon followed the Khan. By the end of May, the Mamluks had retaken Syria. It's not clear exactly why Ghazan left. It's possible that he heard about a Neguderi invasion in the east of his lands and had to deal with it. Or maybe he was afraid there wouldn't be enough grass for his large army to make the trip to Egypt. Whatever the reason, Ghazan had lost the best chance to destroy the Mamluks. Ghazan did cross the Euphrates at the end of December 1300 and got as far as Aleppo, but heavy rains made it impossible to continue military operations. In 1303, Ghazan ordered Kutluk Shah back into Syria, but he was defeated at Marj al-Safar near Damascus in April. Ghazan's death the next year, at only 34 years old, stopped his next attack. Ojaiitu's son, Abu Sa'id, finally made peace with the Mamluks in the early 1320s, but the Ilkhanate didn't last much longer after this treaty. When Abu Sa'id died in 1335, with no one to take his place, the Ilkhanate was torn apart by regional commanders like the Jalayirids, Chobanids, Muzaffarids, and Injuids, who all chose their own puppet khans. The Mamluks couldn't take advantage of the Ilkhanate falling apart, because when Al-Nasir Muhammad died in 1341, they entered their own period of chaos. In Anatolia, the collapse of the Ilkhanate left the area as a collection of small states, or beyliks. One of these was ruled by the warlord Orhan Gazi, and it was the seed from which the powerful Ottoman Empire would grow. All of these states soon had to deal with a new attack coming from the broken lands of the Chagatids, led by a man named Timur. But that's a story for another day, so make sure you're subscribed to our channel and have pressed the bell button. We want to give a big thank you to our Patreon supporters and channel members. You're the ones who make these videos possible. You can also support us now by buying our merchandise through the link in the description. This is Alex Histoer, and we'll catch you on the next one.